Coming on the heels of the accent signed by Mr. President on Engineers Registration Act 2019, which gives a lot of powers to the Council for the Registration of Engineers in Nigeria, COREN, we're looking so much on the real estate sector to sustain discussion on critical issues in the building sector in Nigeria, the value chain. Name it. Is my guest is a strategic development consultant on infrastructure, power, and the agricultural sector, Joshua Egbagbe. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, your concerns are on the building sector.
Yeah.
What are those critical issues you want to highlight?
God bless you, viewers. The challenges we have in the housing sector are actually, I would call them generic, because they are founded on some underlying factors that give rise to the symptoms that we are seeing today. As a development strategist, especially in the area of affordable housing, power and agro-allied sectors, I discovered that we do not look enough at the value chain of these sectors. So let's zero down to our subject of discussion today, housing, building. Of recent, there have been plenty of collapses of buildings, and all of a sudden everybody started shouting about the quality of these buildings. But again, we're not looking at the underlying factors. We're not looking at the what I call the generic factors, the very empirical issues that give rise to these symptomatic manifestations. So I will be looking today with you and with the viewers, the value chain of housing, so that we can identify the linkages and the links that actually give rise to the total integrated picture. You know, let's break it down. You don't think about big picture without the components of the picture. So when we look at that factor of the value chain, we can then discover the weak links. And if you know, there's a law that says the strength of any chain is the strength of the weakest link. So we'll look a lot about on the value chain of housing.
Can we look at it now?
Yeah, why not? Why not? If you look at the value chain of housing, you will discover that there are different factors, factorials, that lead to the affordable housing delivery ecosystem. It's like a matrix that has different components. We have, of course, what people remember the most is the financial component. You know, how much money is available to build houses with. Others talk about building materials. Others talk about the quality of the building themselves. Like COREN has just been empowered by the president with the new assent to have more control of what's happening in the quality section and all of that. Further down the value chain, you know, you're looking at the land issues. Like, you know, we have this big problem of the land, the Land Use Act. You know, you go further, you look at the government participation. How much incentive is government giving to, affordable housing? But one particular factor is sometimes overlooked. And that is the factor of the off-taker. Okay. The very end user, the very person who is going to enter or who needs the houses that we are talking about building.
Are you talking about ownership or leasing?
Now, ownership.
When you say off-taker?
Yeah, off-taker.
Off-taker mean either I'm renting or I'm buying to own. So are you referring to the two?
Off-taker is empirical for all categories of dwellers or those that need a house, whether they get it through a rental or through lease or through outright purchase or through mortgage, is all the same off-taker. Okay, like the end user, more or less. I use the word off-taker because it explains faster, practically, that this depends that takes off, that off takes the product being the housing. But the housing has different factors that influence its production. So let's now look at the off-taker. I see the off-taker, let's take a simple example of a civil servant. You know that most civil servants in Nigeria don't have their own homes. Most of them are renting, and then because of the high exorbitant rates, you find that there's a big challenge for civil servants and workers to be able to afford a home. So what does that mean? It means that there's what I call a negative in a pyramid. A pyramid should stand on its base. so that it will be stable. But when the pyramid stands on its tip, that's the other upside down, that pyramid is not stable. So I use supply to mean the pyramid that has the base. I use the off-takers, that's the demand, for the tip. In this case, the thing is standing on its head because we don't have enough houses to meet the needs of the off-takers. So there's a big pressure on supply. And because there's a big pressure on supply, it means that there's not going to be enough supply of houses to meet the demand. And therefore, shortcuts are being taken to satisfy the demand. And it is in that shortcut mentality a lot of symptoms begin to arise. So when you talk about collapsing buildings, for example, why do buildings collapse? Because they put more floors on a house, on a foundation that should ordinarily take maybe just one floor or at most two. Okay? Because there's such a high demand and the resources to build more houses are not there. So the few that have been built come under intense pressure. Okay. So that becomes an issue we should look at thoroughly, the off-taker challenge. Or if you want to make it more economically understandable, the off-taker affordability challenge. Our off-takers, our workers, can't afford a normal home.
I know that there are a couple of programs that have been launched, initiated by government. There are a lot are ongoing with all kinds of maybe terms of reference or conditions attached to them.
Yeah.
So what solutions can you give to this? You talked about shortcuts.
Yeah.
So what solutions, do you have solutions to this?
Yes. Well, for some years now, my company, Value Chain Project Consultants, we've been doing a lot of research and development, looking into the conceptual and strategic framework to resolve these issues. And in collaboration with the German government agency for sustainable economic development, GIZ, we did a lot of studies with them. They funded some of my research work at the beginning, about a few years ago, to look at this issue of the off-takers' affordability and how it relates to other value drivers in the value chain of affordable housing. And my research papers were really, showed a lot of interesting things that I'm still breaking down. And just at this point in time, I'm beginning to introduce them to the different sectors or stakeholders in the housing ecosystem. We are talking to the mortgage banks, for example. We are talking to the builders. We are talking to the federal government, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. We have linkages with several of these value drivers and stakeholders. And we are telling them that don't make any decision on housing without first considering the challenges of the off-taker. Now, the off-taker is not in isolation. It has to be integrated into the complete value chain of affordable housing delivery. When you don't do that, then you have this wobbly effect. You have this challenge of, sometimes I think that we're a bit lazy. I'm not trying to be condemnatory, but we're a bit lazy with intellectual, analysis. We don't look at issues to the very core, of their empirical and generic foundations. So we give half-baked measures, and these policies that are half-baked will not last. We have propounded a series of solutions to different stakeholders. Our current work is to integrate the different stakeholders. Our current work is to bring to the notice of policymakers the need for what I call a strategic think tank that collates all the different factors and then produces a strategic blueprint. That will now bring in Koren, bring in the architects, bring in the quantity surveyors, bring in the economists. Our economists in this country don't seem to be too involved in the formulation of strategic plans. And that's why you notice that in a country with so much resources, we seem to be running a deficit. It shouldn't be so if we look at the value chain from the beginning. Okay. I think that's the challenge we are trying to overcome.
I'm happy you talked about working in sync with key players.
Yeah.
Like I said, government across the board, federal, state, in working hand in hand with the private sector.
Yeah.
has initiated a lot of programs which are at various stages of either implementation or completion or takeoff. So how well are you networked with them to carry on with this vision?
Networking with government, we should be ordinarily an easy thing, PPP, or the latest jingle, which is PPP, that's quadruple 4 Ps, which is public-private people partnership. The people element is very weak, okay? The people element is, again, the off-taker element. So in working government, very often, one comes against a brick wall of integrating what the private sector working on behalf of the people is trying to get public, that the government, to implement. For example, let me go a bit controversial, if you don't mind. Last year, there was a big budget for building of houses across the country. And I think about 30 states, the federal government, through the Ministry of Power Works and Housing, is already building these houses. But my big question, which I've tried to get answered, is the houses being built, are they in sync with the pocket capacity, with the off-takers' affordability indices of the end users? They are building in Plateau and a few other states, for example. I've been to the Plateau project. I visited it personally so I could see on hand. Can workers afford the houses being built? Or after they are built, are we going to have the same problem in the middle of a humongous deficit of housing? A lot of estates in the country are unoccupied. So finding a proper nexus between our work and government is what we are right now pursuing. Because if there's no nexus, if there's no public-private people partnership, our policies will not be sustainable. And what happens when they're not sustainable? The quacks take over the market. And that's why you have collapsing buildings. Collapsing buildings should not be there in a well-regulated supply and demand matrix. Okay? Because with supply matching demand, there will be no pressure.
So listening to you now, it therefore means you're already, I'll call it work in progress?
Yes, there's serious work in progress.
So which of the maybe government agencies are you networking with?
Well,
to sell and bring solution about what you have?
Well, as time goes on, you will get to know more that there's so much the value chain project consultants group has been doing, both in seminars, in workshops, and of recent, we've engaged very actively with both the Federal Ministry of Power Works and Housing. We propounded in 2016, we had this Affordable Housing Summit, which our company was part of organizing with the German government agencies and other agencies of government and public sector, private sector. And we propounded what we call the paradigm shift. I remember reading the paper, I said there's need for a paradigm shift from a supply-driven emphasis to a demand-driven off-takers affordability emphasis. And that paradigm shift was, thank God, adopted, and it is now in its infanthood stage of implementation across board. We're also talking a lot and working with the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, where the current management has been very active in understanding these off-takers affordability challenges. We're working, of course, with few developers.
We have already a program in place by the federal government, FISH program. Are you working with them?
I work with them, of course. FISH is a very interesting
program. Are you also
program.
working with the NT Properties?
NT Properties, I think we met a few. I think they were at the 2016 Affordable Housing Summit. And
so are you working with NT Properties?
We've not started any serious work.
So do you have plans to work with NT Properties?
Well, you are NTA, so whatever you we are. I call ourselves patriotic development strategists.
Because my interest here is you have used the word consistently. Yeah. Affordability.
Very key.
Affordability,
very
because
key.
There's something we do. People go into a collaboration with a property outfit, and when it comes to affordability tests, the other party cannot afford, so the agreement falls. Yeah. So the word affordability is what is my interest in what you're doing. So how good will this be when you talk about affordability?
Yeah, we have a concept called the Value Chain Market Affordability Platform, VCMAP. Under the VCMAP program, we structure questionnaires that allow the off-taker, the worker, to answer some basic questions. And then we have a software that integrates all the answers and produces what you call your affordability test, or your mortgage affordability capacity, which now allows us to plan what kind of house to build that will match your capacity, what kind of infrastructure for the estate, and of course, what kind of financial plan. Because you see, the housing industry is very it's very multifactorial. You have the financial angle, you have the construction angle, you have the mortgage financial angle, and every of these indices plays a role for the final outcome. But at the center of everything is the worker himself, the citizen who needs a roof over his head and is going into retirement and he has no house. So, your question is really about how to advance all of this.
That's where I'm coming from.
To implementation stage. And we've started pilot work. We have, I think, database now. Yes, I should mention that too. Our affordability research work gives us database. The database allows us to know exactly what are the needs. We do a need assessment. We do a financial assessment. We do the mortgage finance assessment. And then, of course, we do the demographics. Because not everybody wants a house in Abuja. Not everybody wants a house in Lagos. Some people want a house in Kefi or in Benin City or in Calabar or wherever. So our database right now, we have database of close to about 20 states, and it's growing because we have a strategic partnership with the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria. The current president, my good friend Egbagbe Bala Kayagama, have been very much in the forefront of promoting off-takers affordability. So we are trying to create a database for the whole workers who are members of the Trade Union Congress and even more in Nigeria.
So if I ask you this concluding question, now that government has signed this Engineers Regulatory Act 2019, and given the holes you have picked within the sector, the value chain of housing in Nigeria, what hope for the future if all this put together works in sync with what you're doing?
Well, the moment we can resolve the issue of off-takers affordability, we now can design a strategy, long-term strategy, that can meet the hopes of people that need houses in Nigeria. It will then make the current work much easier because, like I said, it is in the deficit of supply that you have a big pressure, and in trying to satisfy that pressure in a hurry, it's just like cooking your yam in a hurry, and the heat doesn't get to the center of the yam before you begin to eat it. Of course, the inside will be raw. Or you take maybe a block of chicken from your deep freeze. If you heat it in a hurry, you don't get to the inside of the cold block of chicken. So in the same way, if we can solve this affordability problem, I'll give a very strategic data for you. If we can get just 1 million Nigerians out of our, is it over 180 million?
Yeah,
just 1 million Nigerians, workers, who can be properly data-based like we're doing now, surveyed for affordability, and let's even assume 5 million naira average price of a house. Multiply 5 million by 1 million. What do you have? 5 trillion. Can you imagine what will happen if 5 trillion naira, which will be paid back by the workers themselves, was targeted into housing? There will be a multiplier effect. Current will actually have work to do then. And it will be work that is strategic and sustainable.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Egbagbe. It was nice talking with you. We hope your solutions will come a long way.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Up next on The Insight is the Media Review segment.